Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 1995 Ford F-350. Up front is a 7.3 liter turbocharged diesel V8, and down below is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now I am super excited to be driving this F-350 because this is a custom built truck. This was built by King Series out in South Dakota to be a 6-door vehicle. And so we're gonna be talking about a lot of the customizations that have been made, what goes into building a truck like this, and just some other general goodies that come with a 6-door F-350. But if you'd like to submit your own vehicle and have it reviewed here on the channel, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. And if you'd like to see all my videos weeks or sometimes months in advance, you can head on over to my Patreon for only $5 a month. But let's get back to that 7.3 liter turbo diesel under the hood. Well, that is the factory Power Stroke diesel that would have came in this truck. However, this particular truck, when it got built, actually got a new old stock 7.3 liter. Meaning it was essentially a brand new engine 25 years later. So this engine and transmission actually only have about 20,000 miles on them. So this thing is going to run forever. It also got all new suspension when they built it, new old stock parts for the front end. And so essentially they built a brand new truck. Now, like I said, paired to it, it is the factory transmission, just a new one. And this still maintains its 4-wheel drive system. But the question on everyone's mind is, how does it feel to drive a 6-door Ford F-350? Well, it is long. It is 23 feet and 9 inches long. This thing is big. And the biggest thing, pun intended, about it is when you hit a bump, you feel it immediately, of course, but then multiple seconds go by before you feel the rear axle hit. I mean, it's almost hilarious how it feels to drive. The suspension is harsh, however, it is on airbags as well. But otherwise, the dynamics of it are very standard 7.3 liter OBS diesel. Nothing really to write home about beyond that. Visibility is good. However, I would have liked to have seen the tow mirrors on the outside just because this vehicle is so long. However, I like the look of the aero mirrors, so that's just personal preference. But for usability, I'd prefer them to be slightly larger. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior, and I'll point out where they modified it and where it's stock OBS. So, right off the bat, the gauges are stock. Off to the left is the oil pressure and coolant temperature, battery voltage and fuel. In the center is the speedometer. Off to the right is the tachometer. Steering wheel stock. We do have cruise control on it. Still works. Love to see that. To the right of the steering wheel, you'll notice a power mirror switch. This is actually, again, out of a newer F-Series pickup truck and a very nice modern touch. And off to the left, we do have a headlight switch and our fuel splitter, because this does have 2 fuel tanks, front and rear, for long distance hauling. We do get a little climate vent. However, they did paint the original trim this candy apple red. This is not how it originally came, but this is what the company did. Moving out of the door, we have more candy apple red aftermarket trim. We do have the standard power window switches. And moving into the center, we do get an aftermarket radio. However, factory climate controls, fan speed, temperature in the center, where to send it off to the right. Climate vent. We do get a power outlet down below, but definitely cool to see. We do have the 4-wheel drive selector down below. And then we move up to this center console. This center console is actually out of a later Ford Series pickup truck, so it does pass the big friggin' bottle test. But again, this is a one-off custom, so there's that. We do get a giant center console. Again, this was added from a later Series F-Series truck. And then we have the seats. The seats have been refinished in catskin covers with the King Series logo on the headrest. Again, that's the company that built this truck. However, speaking of seats, we do have 2 more rows of seating. My first time saying that in an F-Series pickup truck, so let's go talk about the last 2 rows. Getting into the second row, and it feels pretty standard F-350 from back here. These seats are very, very comfortable. They are individual bucket seats, not a bench. And up here you will notice a DVD player. This was added on even after the truck was built by the current owner. Because he has little kids, they had to put the DVD player in, which it's actually a pretty good install. Again, looks relatively OEM, which is nice to see. Down below, however, we do have some climate control options because for the back 2 rows, the standard F-350 just had heater and cooler up at the front. They didn't really care about the second row. And now that they've added a 3rd row, King Series actually used a company called Vintage Air. It's a very common company that builds air conditioning systems for like old hot rods and just old cars that were never even offered with air conditioning. It's called Vintage Air. That's the name of the company. They actually did a separate climate system for the back 2 rows, which is very cool. So I could ride back here for a long time. I'm still going to get air conditioning and heat and not freeze or overheat, which is very, very nice. Sitting right here, I feel like I'm in a regular F-350. You don't really notice too much. You have great legroom and seat room, and it's pretty cool. However, let's now hop into the 3rd row with its own doors for the F-350. One thing I would have really liked was grab handles, because I am not a very vertically blessed human being. Now we're in the 3rd row. Now we up the ante. Now this starts to feel a little strange. I feel like I'm in an excursion, but then I look over my shoulder and I see the 8-foot bed. It kind of messes with your mind. One thing to note about the 3rd row, first of all, this is a bench seat now. So seemingly, this is actually the added row of seats, which is kind of weird to think about. I always thought that they just kind of tacked a cab onto the back, but what they really did was cut it behind the front seats, and this is now the original back seat, and this is the added section. I don't know if that's officially how they did it, but that's how it feels just because these are pretty aftermarket seats. This is a bench seat. Anyway, we do have cup holders back here, and again, that Vintage Air system carries on. The overall quality of interior is great. It's on par with 90s Ford, which arguably wasn't amazing, but this doesn't feel worse than that. This feels like it rolled out of a Dearborn factory this way. The trim pieces, that's why I keep looking up. The trim pieces don't look wavy. They don't look chopped. It doesn't look like they were pasted together. It's really, truly done really well. And we'll talk about price later on, but when you see little details like this, you start to understand the price a little bit more. You're gonna pay for good work, and this is very good work. This isn't a redneck chop-up job, which is very nice to see. So that's it. That's the 3rd row of an F-350 King Series. Pretty neat. Let's hop into the back because they didn't chuck a tiny little bed on it. No, no, no. It is a full 8-foot bed. So let's talk about it. And here it is, the 8-foot bed around the back of the 6-door F-350. First of all, right off the bat, you will notice those are the 2 fillers for the 2 separate diesel tanks. But other than that, this is the stock bed. They didn't extend the bed or anything like that. There we go. Very, very plain and simple. This is what OBS beds got. However, this was normally offered on like single cab, maybe some dual cab trucks, but they never had them this physically long. And so the frame is actually extended as well. So this is the standard 8-foot bed, but it was never meant to be put at the back of so much length. Very, very cool to see. But again, like, you know, no coffee maker, no LED lights, no different weird, or even modern additions. So like the rest of the truck got modern additions. The truck bed certainly did not. There you go. That's around the back of the King Series. Absolutely love it. Now we gotta talk about the looks. And obviously they did a phenomenal job making this truck look great. Of course it was resprayed, and the welds are nearly seamless. While filming this, we had someone walk up and ask if it was factory, if Ford actually offered this back in the era. And while 6-door trucks were actually somewhat of a common modification or common custom build that people would do, it never actually came from Ford. So that's how well done this truck is. I love the subtle, simple wheels. I like that it's not overboard or overblown. It's not too much. They didn't try too hard to make this look like a crazy, crazy truck. If you didn't know better, you would have thought that this was just a factory truck, but it's not. And that's the beauty of this particular custom, is that people might think it. However, with all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving a 6-door F-350 OBS? Well, of course, this has been an incredibly cool experience, and quite the unique one at that. I think the first thing that sticks out about this truck is really the craftsmanship. It's done incredibly well. As I mentioned, people thought that this was just a factory truck, and that is probably the highest compliment that you could pay to a custom car builder. If it looks factory, if it looks like billions of dollars were poured into its R&D and it was built by million-dollar robots, that means it's really well done. And this truck is really well done. So much so that it was actually on the cover of a magazine. Take a look at this. That's so cool. That's what I'm driving right now. I'm so privileged to now be able to add this truck, a pretty famous truck, into my repertoire of reviews. That is very, very special, and I appreciate the owner for that. Now, why would you do this? Why would you want 6 doors? Well, the honest truth is the fact that the owner has a big family. He wanted a cool truck. He had a big family. Now, this truck was originally built by someone else. The original person that had this truck built actually owned a construction company, and he wanted it to carry all of his crew out to the job site. But by the time the truck was finished, it took about 2 years to build this truck. By the time that was all said and done, he loved the truck so much he didn't want to see it used and abused by his workers. He didn't want it to be this dirty work truck, so he ended up buying other work trucks in the meantime and used this basically as a show truck. Now, what does it cost to do something like this? Well, as you saw at the beginning, it's between $100,000 and $120,000. The reason there's a range between it is because the owner bought the donor truck himself, and we don't know how much he bought it for. Here is what the entire conversion cost. Again, that's before the price of buying the donor truck. Of course, then you have to get another donor truck to add the cab on for the back, to add the 3rd row. And there's a lot of custom work that goes into it. The crate motor 7.3 liter was $10,000 of those dollars. So if you don't want a brand new motor, you could do it for $80,000. If you don't want the new front end, you could do it for $75,000. It's a custom thing. So like, this isn't like an MSRP. If you go to your corner store that sells 6-door pickup trucks, you might not get the same price. So that's just what this costs to do. So about $120,000. But for a brand new F-350 with the 7.3 liter that we know is going to last hundreds of thousands of miles, it honestly doesn't sound like the worst price tag I've ever seen. Would I spend it on a truck like this? No, but trucks aren't really my thing. Would I spend 120 grand on a super reliable 80s sports car? Probably. So I can't knock someone else's interest. But driving this, experiencing this vehicle is just so cool. And so here it is, a 6-door F-350. So if you've ever been curious what it's like, here it is. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Omar for not only letting me film his F-350 6-door, but also driving it out here from the East Coast. I appreciate him very, very much. This is such a cool vehicle, and it's all thanks to Omar that I was able to share it with you here today. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.